David DeAngelis presents Follow Yourself, Diary of a Visionary in Search of the Meaning of Life by David DeAngelis. Digitally narrated using the voice of Edward Herman. To Tanya G., who showed me what love is and the beauty of being loved. I will love you until the last of my breaths. The unintentional evil. One morning, as is my woe and tea, I was jogging in a park. Usually when I run, my thoughts hover in the air as if they were birds, carrying me away from my daily commitments. That morning, walking a path around a villa in Rome, I noticed an elderly lady who must have been in her late 80s. Hers was a tired and rather unkempt figure. Her clothes were obviously old and worn. It is ugly to see an elderly person in that state, since at that age everyone should enjoy a certain well-being after a whole life of all kinds of commitments. That figure made me tender, a tenderness born from the sight of that old face and body inside old and humble clothing. Running around that park, I promised myself that, at the next round, I would give her a cash offering, motivating it as breakfast offering from a friend, just so as not to offend or embarrass her. Before completing the ride, I scraped together as much spare change as I could, preparing myself for the encounter of the old woman and for tasting her smile. Arriving at the end of the round, I began to slow down, heading with a heart full of tenderness and the money in my hand, ready to surrender it, toward that figure who, with difficulty, was advancing toward me. Within a few steps of meeting me, the lady began to rail at me, harshly telling me that that park was not for running, and that I, disturbing the visitor's peace, should immediately go somewhere else. Moral of the story: I was hurt. Not so much because of those words, but because I had prepared myself for a heart-to-heart contact with that person, but she had broken my good intention rather abruptly. After the surprise of the moment, I empathized with that person. I immersed myself in that old and tired body. I sensed his aches and pains. I sensed her fatigue and frustration at putting one step forward at a time, given her age and physical condition, something that once was surely something she took for granted and easy. I sensed the weight of her life and her past choices that, perhaps wrong, probably weighed like a boulder on her soul. I empathized with her and sensed her fear of death that the woman probably felt lurking nearby. I empathized and understood. I understood that all the harm we receive from people is not always inflicted with the conscious will to do harm. Many people do harm almost unconsciously, driven by a fire of frustration and suffering that clouds and obscures their own will to do harm, whether physical or psychological. No evil can be justified, but as human beings, it can be understood and filtered. Before we hate our enemy or those who have harmed us, let us try to step into their shoes and personal history. Perhaps the evil we will have received will diminish in intensity until perhaps it will disappear like snow in the sun. Joy is in the heart. Bright smiling eyes, a burning smile, and a deep joy in his heart. This was what transpired from a boy who once, while I was traveling on a train, held out his hand to me and asked for alms. So far, nothing strange perhaps. In today's world, poverty is often masked, at least in economically developed countries, amidst a sea of advertisements for a myriad of products intended for aesthetics and entertainment, and never for sustenance or spiritual progress. What gave me much pause was the great apparent contradiction that existed between that sincerely joyful expression of his and his physical state. The boy was supporting himself on only one leg and on a stick, around which his other leg, deformed and painfully twisted, was as if twisted and clinging. I imagined how strenuous his life must be, since once, during my exhausting sports training in the old days, I almost broke my ankle and was forced for a time to move with a crutch without being able to rest my injured foot. We often fail to realize important things that, unfortunately, have become obvious and taken for granted to us, such as walking. The simple action of walking involves not only proper harmony of the lower limbs, but also a good deal of balance, developed with difficulty in the early years of life. Such action becomes with time taken for granted, and we no longer notice how well our legs serve us in simple actions such as walking, running, or simply standing still. During that time when I had to support myself on a crutch, I learned the real physical fatigue in performing ordinary actions, such as walking around the house. All this I was thinking about as I made my contribution to his kind and joyful request for money. When the boy walked away, I thought again that we are often given many life lessons and teachings at no cost, if only we are open to receive them. That particular boy, at the paltry cost of a bill, had made me think about the relativity of the importance of money compared to the joy of living in spite of any condition. How many times had I seen in people's faces inside fancy cars, in big hotels, on luxurious streets in big cities, that burning joy? Many people nowadays drag through life with a deep sense of unhappiness shining through every fiber of their being, despite having everything. I am reminded of a Chinese proverb, "Have mercy on me, O beneficent one. I was angry because I had no shoes. Then I met a man who had no feet." To be happy is to be able to celebrate everything, even the most obvious. To be happy is to find ourselves and follow it to the end. True happiness is independent of the possession of any diamond. True joy is in the heart. The secret of the shell. I am sitting among huge boulders that act as a cliff outside the harbor of Anzio. I am here with my beloved books, which I often take with me to read in the places that most inspire me to breathe in the lines of their authors. I look at these large rocks that act as a breakwater, protecting the low coast. They are hard, granitic, light-colored rocks. I look at them and am impressed. I see here and there the shape of shells, yes, just D-shells. It is amazing to imagine how a fragile shell can leave its mark, its imprint, its memory on the surface of a hard block of rock. It makes me think of the still waters eroding the land and creating rivers. What immense strength in the sure repetition of flowing and repeating something over time. As the wisdom of the Tao passes down, the real strength is in the soft. I try to understand and make my own the strength contained in the shell, that strength, slow and silent, that allowed it to leave an indelible mark. If I did not see, clear and unmistakable, these shell footprints, I might have even doubted. In life we are like that. We doubt that we can shape what is most important to us, our life. We doubt whether we can give it our imprint and whether we can leave our passage indelible. We doubt by often letting ourselves be lulled by the false thought that we have time to spare and that tomorrow, perhaps the day after tomorrow, we will finally begin to put our heart and soul into that project that has long been knocking inside us. Not so? The sea often recedes and changes its shores. It is necessary for each person to embrace his life by doing what he loves, as the shell does with its piece of rock. It is necessary to embrace one's own piece of heart, the one that makes us grow and keeps us alive before it is too late. It is necessary to have faith that the hardest rock can be shaped by our intention. This is how one gives one's life a meaning that can survive one's death. I still look at the imprint left by the shell and understand its secret. It takes pressure and time to make a mark in anything. Passion. Grab the wind of your life. It is Sunday morning, and the sun is gradually rising. I am sitting on the steps of my beach house and observing the wonderful moment of a new day dawning. A chorus of birds chirps festively, the air is clean, and the greenery of my garden refreshes my spirit. I am here by the sea, most weekends, waiting for wind. I need strong wind to allow the wing of my kitesurf to drag me over the sea. I feel like a child waiting for the time to go for ice cream or to go to the merry-go-round. Now, sitting on these steps, I ask myself, what is happiness? I am sure this question, asked to 1,000 people, would get 1,000 different answers. Everyone has their own vision of life, their own beliefs, expectations, dreams. And there are even those who are afraid to dream, believing that they can avoid the frustration of not achieving their goals. Not dreaming means slowly dying while living. Not dreaming means not giving life the opportunity to drag you into some good adventure. Not dreaming means not allowing life to reward your courage, your will, your faith, giving you what you have sought with all your heart. To dream is to live. To dream is for me to wait for the wind, the strong wind that pulls you enthusiastically toward what you aspire for with all your being. To dream is to go to the beach and offer the wind your wing, your kite, letting yourself be swept through the white foam of the waves, chasing the sensations it brings you. To fall and then see the wing rise again, happy, joyful, and rebellious up there in the sky. To dream and believe that you can do and then succeed is to raise your arms triumphantly to the sky for knocking down your doubts and fears, simply by doing what it is you love to do. To dream is to head toward one's goal with the innocence of a child going for his or her ball. All this, and much more, is for me happiness. Many people live not waiting for the wind. That wind that sooner or later in life arises and asks you to harness it and follow it. The wind of enthusiasm, of passion, of dreaming. Many people are afraid to dive of life, living to save everything. Money, energy, dreams, hopes. They will never taste the salt on their lips. Look for the wind of passion in your life, and you will find it. Know that somewhere it is already blowing, and that sooner or later it will find you. It will find you because you will have waited for it, and because you knew it would come sooner or later. Be ready. Keep your gaze toward what you aspire to and makes your heart beat. Have the courage and take the plunge. Know that the wind is a force of nature that is sure to rise sooner or later, like the passion in every man's life. Let it carry you toward your goal. Then and only then will you discover what it is to truly live and be happy. Don't complain, but give thanks. Sometimes I find myself thinking about how I would like my life to be. More freedom, more money to conquer it, more love, a house in front of a beautiful view, and many more pluses. Nothing wrong with that. When imagination and desire arise from a sincere desire for evolution and improvement of the quality of life, which, to my way of thinking, does not mean owning a newer and more powerful car, or even having a wardrobe of designer clothes, if anything. To have the freedom of time and financial freedom to do only what I feel is right for me, for others, and for my life. The bad comes when we become slaves to our own desires, blind to the many blessings we each already possess. When this happens, we fail to see our blessings, to hear the voice of our real needs, which often boil down to essentially very little of what we demand or yearn for. When we fix our minds on what we lack, we walk with the stooped, haggard face of one who does not know or has forgotten about the priceless treasures he already possesses. Paradoxically, if we subtracted these "I wish" from our lives, we would automatically acquire more abundance, well-being, and balance in our lives. Too often I have heard, and continue to hear, the lamentations of people who could instantly feel like kings, without adding anything else to their lives. I am reminded of a beautiful page by an anonymous person, which I found between the lines of a book, and which we should read at the dawn of each day, to open each of our eyes to all the great blessings and riches that accompany our lives now, at this very moment. Lord, forgive me when I complain. Today, on a bus, I met a beautiful blonde girl. I envied her. She looked so cheerful, and I wished I was just as attractive. When she suddenly got up to get off the bus, I saw that she was limping. She had only one leg and was walking with a crutch. But when she passed by me, what a smile! Oh, Lord, forgive me when I complain, because I have two legs. The world is mine. I went into a store to buy some sweets. The clerk was very nice. I chatted, and he seemed to like it. If I had been late, it wouldn't have been too bad. And on my way out, he said, "Thank you, you've been so nice. It's nice to talk to people like you. You see," he said, "I'm blind. Oh, God, forgive me when I complain, because I have two eyes. The world is mine." Then, as I was walking down the street, I saw a little boy with blue eyes. He was standing still watching others play, not knowing what to do. I stopped for a moment and asked him, "Why don't you go play with the others, dear?" He looked straight ahead, and that's when I realized he was deaf. Oh, Lord, forgive me when I complain, for I have two ears. The world is mine. With feet that take me where I want to go, eyes that see the splendor of the sunset, ears that hear what I want to know. Oh, God, forgive me when I complain. I am truly blessed. The world is mine. Anonymous. Shoot the arrow. There comes a time in life when, after a long period of painstaking preparation about something we have long worked on and believed in, it is time to act. It is a special moment. All the faith of preparation and all the fear of failure is with us. Everything can end in the stillness of non-action, or everything can arise in the final act of all that work. It is often the moment in which many get lost, stuck in a stream of doubts and fears that block the spirit and nail down the possible unfolding of events. Like an archer who has trained meticulously on all the stages of shooting, he has trained his arms and shoulders to stretch his bow safely and firmly. He has learned to transfer his attention from perceiving the tension in his muscles to adjusting the rhythm of his breathing. He has learned to perceive the beat of his heart until it is deep and regular. Only then does he see the target and finally shoot his arrow, letting go of all tension into a state of relaxed surrender. He is free from the result. He has shot his arrow with mastery, the result of a long period of solitary learning. All of us are archers in life, often with long hours of preparation behind us. We all have goals to achieve and actions to take. Calling a long-lost friend, revealing our love to a person, opening our project, locked for years in a drawer, and presenting it to the world. Many lose in this battle, even before hitting the target. You turn your back on life when you decide not to shoot your arrow and let it rot in your hand. When the arrow is guided by the heart, one must let it go no matter what happens. So stand up, stretch your bow, and shoot your arrow. Whatever goal you reach, you will have brought forth an important part of your being and life. Like a warrior. Sometimes I realize how fragile I am in the face of the world and life. It is a strange feeling, totally opposite of the feeling I get when I feel totally in control of my existence. I suddenly realize how small we are in the middle of the ocean of life. Professional success, personal fulfillment, love, and health itself. We can play our part in all this by anchoring ourselves in our highest dreams and working on them day after day. But the unfolding of the story and the plot, only a great and mysterious force beyond our control and commitment can decide it. I believe in divine providence and the synchronistic circumstances that make life an even greater and impenetrable mystery. I like to believe that this mysterious force that decides on our destiny has respect for our existence, directing us toward our growth, fulfillment, by giving us the opportunity to receive and give love. I always write love with a capital A, as I believe it is such a great and important thing that it has it by birthright. Sometimes I wonder where I will get to with my little boat in the sea of life. I carry all my dreams and hopes with me, venturing toward destinations in my heart. I seek the strength within myself, the faith to move forward, and sail toward that faraway island that many writers describe in 1,000 facets. That is why I am a visionary, and I am happy about it. If I did not have my vision, I would be like a leaf in the wind. But deep down I am the same, even if I want to convince myself that the wind will blow in the right direction. In the face of this feeling of bewilderment, in the face of life that occasionally catches me unprepared, the only thing I can do is to dress up as a warrior and go on my way knowing that whatever my fate may be, I will have given my best, dreaming and fighting for something immensely great, my life. Come out of the coma and embrace life. Last night I had a great teaching from a reader of mine, with whom I was meeting via the internet to help him on his journey of visual re-education. I knew from emails he had sent me previously that some years earlier he had been in a coma for a period of almost 3 months, and I was interested to know his intentions about his experience. After an hour-long talk on how to apply the exercises I propose as the Power Vision system, I asked him if he could give me his impressions of his coma. Well, from the position of teacher, I changed to that of dumb and astonished student and spectator of his words, which were of great teaching to me, and I think everyone should know. Through the webcam, he showed me the fetal position in which he held his hands, curved and attached to his chest, as a baby holds them in its mother's womb, almost as if it were a return to a pre-birth stage, almost as if it were a restart from the life he had led so far. What really amazed me was not so much the fact that the immobility of mind and body had led him to weigh only 40 kilograms, but all that took place after what had been his transition from a deep coma to an awake coma, and then on to his awakening, to his rebirth into this life of his own. He told me that although he at that time was the age of 18, he had to relearn everything all over again, all the small and large motor actions that we easily and unknowingly perform every day were a source of challenge for him, like a child who has to learn everything from scratch. What impressed me with its great truth is the fact that, as he told me, we all take for granted the simple things in life, but are actually of tremendous value. Scratching one's forehead, talking, making a smile, walking, jumping, blowing one's nose, are things that he yearned to be able to relearn and previously took for granted in his life, just like the rest of us. He also told me about a boy like him, a roommate, who could slur his words by pushing his hands on his chest to let out the air needed to give sound to his vocal cords and speak. At that moment, even that was a challenge and an achievement for him. At one point he asked, "David, do you believe in God?" And I said yes. He went on to say, "From that moment I started to make progress, and after a short time I was out of the hospital. That boy unfortunately was less fortunate than me. Now I can run, he unfortunately cannot. Either my prayers were answered or different was his karma." He then ended the conversation by giving me another pearl of lived and suffered life. We should all thank God and life for every time we open our eyes in the morning and start a new day. There is priceless treasure in every moment of life we have in front of us, which we often, unfortunately, take for granted. At the end of that communication, I felt indebted to him for the teaching he gave me, which was to love life and dive into it, embracing it every moment as if it were our last. I proposed to help him personally in his desire to see better and better with his physical sight, by putting my personal experience on the subject at his disposal. Now I think, how many of us go through life in an unconscious, watchful coma? So vigilant that we do the things of life, but without an awareness of them, and without the life drive, that one should have to truly live with joy and enthusiasm, and not merely survive? I live now this beautiful awareness. I am here again at the seaside, sitting on the steps of the house, my beloved cat, Ippo, absolutely wanting to scratch his head with my hand, engaged on this keyboard. If I love life more today, it is also thanks to the extraordinary gift given to me by this extraordinary reader who, if he puts his great lived experience of coma to good use, will do the most extraordinary thing everyone should do in life: truly live. Thank you, Leonardo. Fly higher. We are children of our parents and their mentality. We are children of our neighborhood and its streets. We are children of the society we were born into and our historical era. We are children of a past that is known, but of a future that needs to be unveiled, discovered, and created. Summer is over, and I am standing before the vast sea and its majestic waves crashing furiously on the rocks. Up there is a seagull flying lightly, gliding above a strong wind that sustains him. I wonder what world he sees from his perspective. How he sees me, a speck down there scanning the sea and the force of the waves. Maybe he sees me as a poor being who cannot fly like him and is forced to crawl on the earth with his legs or inside those strange iron boxes called automobiles. I wonder now which of the two is luckier. Me who struggles so hard to live trying to make my soul and life take flight, or him who asks for nothing more than to soar through the sky? But what more do you want? The voice of the society in which I live comes peremptorily to my inner ear. You have a job, the security of having bread as long as you want it. Not even if you were a precarious worker who is forced, in spite of flourishing degrees and specializations, to pray for a secure place like yours. I then try to figure out within myself what is wrong, what I would like more from life. For a moment it is as if I take flight and catch up with the seagull and lie down above the wind to scan the world in which I live from a different perspective. I see, observe, and understand, freeing myself from the perspective of my society, its conventions and way of seeing. I see a world where only the one who truly knows his way and consciously chooses it is truly free. The one who loves what he does as it makes him grow as a person and makes his spirit satiated. It is not enough to live in a world that makes you a slave to a job you do not love, just because it gives you the security of being able to have at the end of the month what to feed yourself and your family with. No, this is not living, this is surviving. Slowly killing your spirit, your deepest aspirations, your soul, behind endless hours of work that give you nothing but an appearance of security and freedom, is not living, but selling your spirit to a society that wants you to be a slave and a consumer. Everyone should try to take flight and rise as high as possible, above all that conditions the view and knowledge of his soul. Who am I? Where was I born? What society has welcomed me into this life? Are questions that should take a back seat to who am I really, deep inside myself? And why am I here, on this world, at this precise moment and historical epoch? From this higher, immense perspective, above all illusions of reality, we will be able to discover what gives us joy and fulfillment, to understand the reason for our life. Only then will our context, our work, our friends, our streets, and our society acquire meaning. Everyone must strip away the superfluous, embrace the essence that resides within us, and have the courage to ask, why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? If we have an ear enough, we will understand what will make our life a success of our soul. I wonder why, when a child is born, we do not put a small chain on his wrist that says, listen to yourself, know yourself, we need to fly high and overcome our own context and beliefs to reach ourselves and understand what makes our spirit fly high. At that moment, we will no longer crawl on unknown roads, but we will fly high, being able to discern our own path perfectly. Dare, act and be silent. Dare. Let your steps seek the high peaks. Achieve what you feel must be done for the attainment of what you most aspire to. Wear the courage of knights in battle and follow the emotion of your greatest dream. Ride your emotions and dare. Each time you dare, you will have sown a seed in your secret garden that will perhaps one day create leaves and fruit. Then, in that future time, which is already planted in the present, you will enjoy the shade of your flower garden and taste the fruits of your daring. Take action. Your dreams need legs to walk and arms to work. Do whatever you feel is important and valuable. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is one less step toward victory. Use all the arrows in your bow, but waste none of them. Only those who are afraid and do not act following the path of their heart fail. Follow your highest passions, the ones that make you a better person. Have faith that there is always a road, even in the midst of brambles. It will open the moment you begin to believe in it. Not acting is also an action. If you feel it is time to stop and wait, sometimes you have to listen to yourself to choose one turn over another. One step forward can make you cross the finish line. One step too many and at the wrong time can make you fall into the abyss. Don't be afraid, but be brave. The biggest mistake is waiting for a time to be ready, a time that may never come. Genius is in the action of the heart. Shut up. Speech breaks the power of thought and therefore slows down manifestation. If you have a dream, imagine it, act on it, and tell no one about it until it is a stronghold. Only then can you talk about it, when no one can but. Prayer for world peace. I wrote this prayer long ago, and it has been sitting in my drawer for too long now, without being able to speak to people's hearts. I would like to give it to you, the reader, so that you can do your part today, against everything that stands in the way of peace, a sense of fraternal belonging of all the races and religions of the world, and so that everyone may see their basic rights recognized. First and foremost, the right to live. I would like these words to go around the world to wake up everyone, and give them the opportunity to understand that we are all brothers under one sky. Become an ambassador for peace, and get the soul of this prayer flowing by giving a copy to your friends, but especially to your current enemies, if you ever have any. Hang it where many can read it. When someone from afar holds it out to you in their hand, you will know with certainty that it has also gone around the world because of you. Here it is, peace. Look into the eyes of your enemy. Look at the being within his body. Observe his fears. Understand them and make them your own. Observe the search for life behind his dreams and hopes. See his children, his wife, and his home. Walk in his shoes, worn out from a long walk. Breathe in his feelings and emotions. Picture him hugging his mother and listen to her recommendations like a child. Listen to his doubts about life and its existence. Feel his fear of losing existence in a conflict, futile because it is contrary to life. Recognize God within him and see yourself behind his eyes. Magic of intention and determination. Today is a big day for me. I have just received 12 sheets of contract for publication in English with a very good American publishing house. I have the contract signed by the publisher in my hand. What I have to do now is to sign it too and send the copy to the United States. The other day I learned that my Italian publisher has concluded a co-publishing contract with a very good German publisher. My book on myopia will therefore also be translated into German. My mind leaps back in time. A year ago I was hoping that my book would find a greater audience and be published in other languages and with major international publishers. I simply hoped, and only today, after this, which is a double success for me, I can definitely say that just hoping is not enough to create one's desires and make them manifest in life. From a posthumous perspective, I can see the magic of events and, above all, the magic behind intention and determination. Only when life recognizes in your thoughts and actions a strong intention to be, do, or have something, does the universe move to fulfill your desire. It is only when strong intention is manifested in the determination to be, do, or have that something, being willing to courageously and confidently face whatever obstacles may lie ahead, that the magic of the manifestation of that which is desired to be achieved is manifested. Only now do I understand this mechanism that, if applied wisely, could truly make each being on this planet king. We have in us a magic wand capable of manifesting in reality. If I had to sum up in 2 words the essence of this enormous power, I would summarize it as intention and imagination, seeing and feeling oneself already in the situation one wants to experience, holding what one wants to have, feeling already who you want to be. A process that happens in the present moment, simply by shifting one's attention to the feeling of the desire already fulfilled, not a "I wish," but "I already have it," enjoying with all the senses and emotions the fulfillment of the desire. Our world is a reflection of our consciousness. Our consciousness is the result of our beliefs and expectations, as well as our faith. It really is possible to consciously create the experiences and sensations in our lives simply by imagining them as already being part of our present experience. Imagination, together with the strong emotions evoked, are the command to realization in our reality. A great power that could liberate every life toward its own highest realization. That is why I am writing these lines, so that such words, combined with the evidence in my personal experience, may reach you, the reader, in some place and time, to make you experience the exhilarating feeling of conscious and non-random creation, to make you aware that you can be the king of your world and your life. Ask and you will be given. What did you ask for? Enter the mental field you want to experience, and the field will be yours. You will have drawn it to you through the power of intention and emotion. I remember when I decided to go to the Frankfurt International Fair to find foreign publishers willing to publish my books. I remember my strong intention to be an international author. I remember my great determination to achieve the goal, when for 3 days I presented myself at dozens and dozens of stands of international publishers, trying to use my italic English to the best of my ability to sell the rights to my books. I remember when, at the end of those 3 fiery days, yes, it was really my shoes that almost caught fire given the miles I traveled in that huge book fair, when it was my own Italian publisher who personally introduced me to what are now my current American and German publishers. Who would have ever imagined that? None of the publishers I had contacted on my own in the previous days would be willing to publish me, but 2 publishers introduced to me when I was sitting resting my feet at the Italian publisher's booth. Moral of the story: There is magic in determination. Help yourself that God helps you. Do everything in your power to achieve your goals and do your part in the battlefield. Always do it with the knowledge that one way or another what you already feel beating in your heart will be yours, because you already feel it alive and pulsating within you. Feel it in your heart already realized. Taste it with every fiber of your being. There is no greater power than to be aware that you are the sole creator of your own world. Health, a personal responsibility. I am standing in line at Han Airport check-in in Germany after my visit to the Frankfurt International Book Fair. Surrounding me in the long line I am in is a group of young German students. I assume they are going on a school trip to the city of Rome, where we are headed by plane. They look festive and carefree, just like I did when I was in high school and going on a field trip somewhere. What strikes me is seeing these kids full of life feasting on mountains of junk food. I wonder how these kids will be able to maintain their level of health by feeding on all these pseudo-foods that move their body's physiology away from its original rhythms and biochemistry. We all are what we think, but more importantly, what we eat. This truth is most noticeable today in the light of the physical degeneration that undermines the health of modern man, precisely because of the spread of certain foods and eating styles so different from those of our ancestors, and so far removed from the natural growth and ripening of fresh foods rich in life and vitality. Diseases that did not exist or were rare in the past are becoming more and more prevalent in today's civilization. Diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases, and others that are gradually spreading unbeknown to the unsuspecting man who feeds on the basis of social beliefs about health and eating habits. Industry and commerce run the show. They hypnotize the masses and rewrite their social, eating, and living habits through the powerful media still prevalent today. The result is a modern man who does, thinks, and eats like a child, following the advice of a mom and dad whose names are advertising and commerce. The result is loss of a healthy eating style that accords with human physiology, that lays its foundation in millennia of evolution and adaptation, and is now in utter confusion, precisely because of new foods and eating habits. This conditioning also increases other markets, such as those of physical and mental health in a chain, precisely because of the subtle and increasingly substantial imbalances that such eating habits create on the unsuspecting mass of people. There is a need for policy to take to heart the development of a healthy society, one that is born and developed on optimal levels of health and vitality. Health draws its roots from that which can enhance or, conversely, depress and destroy the physiology and biochemistry of the body. Nutrition. We are beings of energy that feed on energy. We need to develop a desire to delve into what lies behind proper health. And the first step is to understand the importance of what you take in food and beyond on a regular basis. You take in garbage and pseudo-foods, chemically and genetically modified. And your energy and health level will become as feeble as a candle in the wind. Feed yourself foods that are full of condensed energy, and that respect the evolutionary basis of your biochemistry and physiology, and you will see your health, and with it, your very life enhanced. Before a culture of public health is established, everyone must take personal responsibility for informing themselves about the reality of what makes you healthy and vital, beyond the sea of misinformation that still reigns in the service of commerce and health care. The King's Secret. I am just outside the small town of Zlin in the Czech Republic. Autumn is showing itself in the full splendor of its colors. There is a forest and a large gateway that opens, giving me access to an immense villa. The villa conveys a feeling of comfort and solidity through its beautiful burning fireplace and its large rooms overlooking a large lawn, facing a landscape of unspoiled nature. We are at a friend's, and I am told the owner's story, the story of a taxi driver who until 10 years earlier plied the streets of that small town, looking for customers to transport in the effort to bring home a livelihood for his wife and 2 children. A story that could be similar to many, were it not for the fact that this taxi driver at the time invested in an idea, having courage, taking risks, but winning in the end. Many of his colleagues and acquaintances might say, luck, just luck. I say, imagination and courage. What can so drastically change a man's life in favor of wealth, well-being, fulfillment, and a widespread and tangible sense of harmony? Luck? No. Imagination and courage. The enormous power of imagination set that man free, rewarded him for breaking the limits of that world of his, a world and a kind of life that he considered in his mind narrow and unsuitable for him. Courage then did the rest, for it is action that makes thought material. In that man's eyes, I read the power of a taxi driver to become king in a palace and captain of his most majestic dreams. Not a matter of money and material wealth, but the power to affirm oneself beyond the limitations imposed by life. The power to change, the power to evolve. This is the story of the taxi driver and the king of the caterpillar who became a butterfly. Many will think that this is just another story, and in the end, everyone will go back to bearing the burden and limitations of his or her daily life, regardless of the great truth that lies hidden. I turn around and see parked at the end of the park an old and abandoned cab, what must have once been the workhorse of the king of that palace and his new existence. I sense distinctly the strong difference between those two different worlds. I hear a rustling in the woods at the edge of the mansion, right where the old cab is parked. It almost seems to me to whisper, in the wind, the king's secret. Imagine and expand your world. Have courage. The value of things. My memory runs to my last birthday, when I woke up with one of the most beautiful gifts I have ever received. I opened my eyes and saw her sparkling eyes smiling at me. Then, in a special tone, she said to me, "Best wishes," lying down behind me and hugging my shoulders. I understand how the greatest values in life have no economic value, but are gifts that human beings exchange without wanting anything in return. Love is one of them, in all its forms and manifestations. A nurse's care for a sick person beyond the hours of her shift, a bit of companionship to an elderly person left alone and forgotten, the presence of a friend in a moment of discouragement, the joyful and unexpected embrace of the beloved. The greatest values in life cannot be bought with money, because there is no price that pays for the spontaneity of a gesture and a feeling. Those who are able to buy everything in life know this well. Only at that point are you able to fully understand, and sometimes with dismay, that the power of money has limits, big limits. Of course, better to have and possibly a lot of it, but who would give up the sincere embrace of love or the comforting word of a friend who is there with you because he loves you? I close my eyes and think about my unexpected birthday present, his warm embrace. I felt his love as if it were tangible. I would not trade that for anything in the world. It is a great truth, the most beautiful things in life cannot be seen or touched, but must be felt in the heart. Choose your masters. A man's life can be compared to a tree. The tree sinks its roots into the soil, seeking nourishment with which to grow. The man sinks his roots into the substance of the society in which he lives, his social class and his family. Beliefs, limitations, and potentialities propel the latter toward the sky of his life, in the unfolding of his whole being as a person whose ultimate goal, whether conscious or unconscious, is his evolution and spiritual growth. Just as the tree grows and reaches out in every direction, but still upward, so is man who, following his primordial instincts, records in his essence every little experience, until at some moment of his journey, he comes to understand his intimate essence and the very meaning of life. But what distinguishes man more than any other living being on this planet is the fact that he can choose the nourishment of his life, thus being able, as far as he can, to influence its growth and evolution in the sense and direction he consciously desires. And therein lies the difference. While the tree is anchored to its piece of land throughout its existence, always feeding on the same soil and quenching its thirst with the water that its climatic region can offer it, man possesses a quite different potential, encapsulated in his very possibility of choice. What nourishes a man's life is not only his eating and drinking. He feeds on emotions, experiences, and teachers. Although his emotions and experiences may be dictated by chance and his own character inherited from birth, so is not the case with his teachers. Masters are one's friends, one's life partner. The environment in which one lives, but, most importantly, that to which one gives one's attention, day after day, throughout one's existence. Those who do not realize this, do not know the power of the drop that pierces the rock, and do not even realize how their habits govern the direction and the very fate of their lives. Just think of the thousands of hours lost forever for the sole purpose of not thinking, immersed in the hypnotic sea of false and uneducated teachers, such as the media pastimes of our era. Imagine then how a great tree can, day after day, make itself more and more majestic, despite having sprung from a small seed. You will then be able to understand how time and choice of direction are of such great importance in the development of a tree and a man's destiny. Imagine a man who has unconsciously entrusted his growth and evolution to TV dramas, game shows, gossip, and advertising. He is like a tree that drinks from an unhealthy spring. On the other hand, there is the man who is conscious of his existence and evolution. He entrusts his life to a constant and limpid nourishment, that which comes to him from those whom he has chosen as the masters of his life. Yesterday I was walking with my books in a park, looking for a place to savor nature and let my thoughts fly, when my attention was caught by two individuals sitting on the same bench. Very similar, but profoundly different in something. The two were bent over reading. My great interest in reading often leads me to recommend books to strangers in whom I come across in bookstores and who are standing in front of the same shelf as me, as well as to approach people who are reading to find out the title of the book that is the object of their interest. I then approached the two strangers and became aware of what they were reading. The first one was holding an actual book whose cover I thought I remembered. Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, a book that leaves its mark and is difficult to forget, given its instructive value and the great poetry that envelops its prose. The second, I noticed right away that he was holding a magazine like you see many, full of advertisements, society news, and advice on how to dress to be fashionable and in accordance with bon ton. At that very moment, I realized how responsible we are for ourselves, and how consciously choosing the teachers we want to learn from can create the direction of our lives in the long run. Those two readings were for me two masters, two voices speaking to the ears and lives of those two men. So I wondered where one day the written voice of Hermann Hesse would lead one, and where the scandalous report would lead the other. My reflection ended at the thought that just as Siddhartha, the protagonist of the famous novel, had succumbed to worldly temptations in order to experience them, and then treasured the abyss into which his soul had fallen, so each person is free to choose the direction of his or her life. However, it is up to us to know and sense where the masters consciously chosen by us on the path of our life will lead us by the hand. July 28th, birthday. It is my birthday. Today I am turning my first 37 years old. I am sitting on a bench under the shade of a generous tree that gives me its shade and inspiration. I have with me the autobiography of one of the greatest novelists of the era in which I write. I will not say the name, for there are others and I would be sorry not to mention them, for I love them all. I love them all, for they inspire my life as I would like it to be. As chance would have it, running out of bookmarks, I found to mark pages read, a sheet of paper. This paper is my resume, my professional life, a part of my story up to what is now my 37 years. I wonder what I have done right, how I have honored my life so far, and how I have given birth to my personal legend. The paper contains what I have achieved so far, and what I appear to be in the real world so far, a 37-year-old good guy. Sure, maybe I am a cat and have been one in a few thousand lifetimes. Maybe I'm too lazy to do things I don't love, I don't know. All I know today is that I want to follow my own path. I want to do what I love, and perhaps what I was born to do. I write to you, reader, at this time in my story, not knowing at what point in your life these words will come to you, and not knowing who I will be and what I will do when perhaps one day they will come to you. I clutch the book in my hand, the life of this great novelist. I admire his narrative skill, but even more so his ability to believe in himself when he was still working as a laborer and shop boy. Who would have ever believed in him? I wonder. The bookmarking page of my life is lost among the pages of the great writer's life, as if it were a small seagull among the glitter of an immense sea. I do not know how my life will go from now on, I only know that I will breathe to write, to communicate with the hearts that want to read my lines. I do not care who I have been so far. I'm ready to dive into my dream, to be reborn into my new life. I will do it with all of myself, loving what I do. Before diving back into reading those exciting pages of that writer's life, I lay my eyes on the page of my resume. He speaks to himself, only to himself, and that is not what I want to do from now on. I want to speak to the hearts of the world, if only to. I see that page clinging to the pages of that book, as if telling him, "Take me with you, take me with you." It seems to be telling him, "I want to live like you. I want to do what I love." Writing and communicating. To make hearts dream and spirits soar. Maybe it's a dream, maybe it's an illusion. But that's all I want now, my birthday. I hope the first day of my new life. The good, a personal responsibility. Today I realized a great truth, which is that sometimes God needs us to extend His hand of help and assistance. We often invoke His intervention so as to bring help to those in need, asking Him to turn an unfavorable situation around, as if we were spectators of a movie in which God is both director and actor. I realize that this is not so. It is not enough to pray for God to manifest Himself through synchronistic happenings and blessings that will lift us or others out of danger or a difficult time. But we must be ourselves who, in the first person, carry His own hand to help us or others. Before asking God for help, we should ask ourselves what we have done for that situation that needs help. Before relying totally on God, we need to show Him and ourselves that we have acted in all ways to change our own or another's unfavorable situation. Sometimes it is easy to pray for something or someone, but at the same time, remain indifferent, when in fact we could in our own small way bring our own contribution of good. If everyone would begin to think this way, taking some responsibility for the good done to ourselves or others, God's hand would surely be quicker and safer. We complain within ourselves because things are not going the way they should. But how much have we done, hoped, struggled, and persevered for victory and triumph? We often pray for divine intervention for this or that situation, placing all the responsibility for solving a problem on God, but how much have we really done ourselves to intervene in that situation? How to ask God if we ourselves have not yet made our contribution? Small truths that could change the world, but are so blatant that we don't see them, or if we do see them, we pretend not to see them. Only after stretching our arm beyond its extreme limits, in order to change a situation for the better and to assist another being, can we hope to obtain a divine blessing, or the intervention of a lucky chance, or divine providence. Everyone should feel responsible to lavish his share of good, so that he may one day sense God's footsteps approaching to help him. Knock and have faith. Some time ago, I met a journalist from a well-known and widely circulated magazine for human health and well-being. I asked him if, in his opinion, there would be any chance for me to write in that magazine. His response was that writing there is a bit like being part of a caste. In a sense, one is chosen and can consider oneself privileged. In any case, I asked him for his email contact to have access to at least a chance, however remote. A few days later, I contacted him by email, and he pointed me to the person I should contact to introduce myself and ask for a chance to collaborate. Since it was a magazine devoted to sports and wellness, I bought 2 copies of 2 of my books devoted to the subject and went to the post office to mail them to that person who was supposed to evaluate my application. After that day, more than 4 months passed without any response. I then wrote again to that first reporter, asking him if my cover letter and books had been received. His response was that he knew nothing, and that there was nothing he could do to help me. Result when faced with this situation: it is me and silence. How to evaluate this silence? I tried to imagine how things happened. My package with the books was lost, and that person did not read them. My package arrived but lies, still unopened, among the unread mail of a crowded newsroom. My books were read and then given to some acquaintances. My books were read, and I was not deemed fit to write in that magazine. Now I try to feel within myself what to do before giving up on the idea. I decide to call that person to whom I sent the books, trying to find out if he has read them and if he has considered my application to be on the staff of that magazine. I dial the phone number, trying to foreshadow who might be on the other end of the phone and how to introduce myself. There he answers the phone. I introduce myself. After a few words, he tells me if we can call each other too, and that he had already read one of my books. He further tells me apologetically that he should have called me long ago. A friendly discussion immediately ensues, and he asks me to get in touch again the following week to find a place for my collaboration on the magazine. Before ending the call, he asks me if I would be passing through Milan for a direct acquaintance and a coffee. Moral of the story: nothing would have happened if I had not decided to knock on that door once more, and had forever given up my desire because of those months of silence and apparent rejection. I do not know whether I and that person, with whom, surprisingly enough, a great spirit of cooperation was immediately created, will have a chance to collaborate together on the magazine. What I do know is that one has to know what one wants, and that one has to knock courteously on doors that might open a way in life for us. If in our hearts we are convinced of our ideas and know that our project could enrich our own and others' lives in a spirit of collaboration, then we should confidently continue on our way and keep knocking and trying. Ask and it will be given to you. Knock and it will be opened to you are timeless words that can help anyone find their way. The lost time. We choose in every moment to whom and to what we give our attention and time. We may or may not be aware of it, but our energies, thoughts, actions, and emotions are constantly devoted to something, someone, or just ourselves. It is important to be able to become aware of the time we devote to people, thoughts, and actions that we often perform automatically, without realizing it anymore, because they are now part of our life automatism. The goal is not to become automatons in life, but to develop the precious gift of attention and awareness of what we want to be, achieve, and what we want to share with others. There is a beautiful story by Dino Buzzati, which is worth reflecting on, and whose text I quote in full. It makes us realize the importance of being alive and aware of the time that passes, day after day, empowering ourselves to employ it with awareness and attention, as it is a precious resource in life and will never come back. A few days after taking possession of the sumptuous mansion, Ernst Kazira, on returning home, spotted from a distance a man with a crate on his shoulders, coming out of a side door in the boundary wall and loading the crate onto a truck. She did not have time to catch up with him before he had left, so he chased him in a car, and the truck went a long way, all the way to the far outskirts of town, stopping at the edge of a valley. Kazira got out of the car and went to see. The stranger unloaded the crate from the truck and, having taken a few steps, dumped it into the botro, which was cluttered with thousands and thousands of other identical crates. He approached the man and asked, "I saw you take that crate out of my park. What was in it? And what are all these crates?" The one looked at him and smiled. "I still have some on the truck to throw away." "Don't you know? It's the days." "What days?" "Your days." "My days?" "Your lost days. The days you lost. You were waiting for them, weren't you? They came? What have you done with them? Look at them, untouched, still swollen. What about now?" Kazira looked. They formed an immense pile. He went down the slope and opened one. Inside was an autumn road, and at the bottom Graziella, his fiancée, who was leaving forever. And he didn't even call her. He opened a second one. There was a hospital room, and on the bed his brother Joshua was sick and waiting for him. But he was out on business. He opened a third. At the gate of the miserable old house stood Duck, the faithful hound, who had been waiting for him for 2 years, reduced to skin and bones. And he did not dream of returning. He felt caught by a certain thing here at the pit of his stomach. The unloader stood straight on the edge of the valley, motionless as a vigilante. "Lord," Kazira cried out, "listen to me. Let me take away at least these 3 days. I beg you, at least these 3. I am rich. I will give you whatever you want." The unloader gestured with his right hand, as if to indicate an unreachable point, as if to say that it was too late and that no remedy was no longer possible. Then he vanished into the air, and instantly the gigantic pile of mysterious crates also disappeared, and the shadow of night descended. Now you will have realized that every moment you let go in your life could be lost forever in the sea of time. There are 3 things that never come back: an arrow shot, a word uttered, every moment of your life. So know how to give proper value and importance to the time you devote to the things and people you love. Make sure that no one you love may have suffered from your lack of time, because time on this earth is not infinite. Always make sure that you are not indebted to a kiss, a caress, and a word of comfort, because we may no longer have the time to give it, and whose regret we may retain forever. How you will be remembered. The world seems to be spinning at an increasingly whirling speed. With it run people, wrapped up in the whirlwind of life, not knowing where they are going and no longer remembering where they came from. We all come and will return to the ocean of eternity after this brief passage we all call existence. Not everyone knows that every action we take and every thought we have produces an impulse and a chain of reactions, whether visible or invisible. We realize this only when, at a certain point in our lives, we begin to draw sums and take stock. Someone has said that we all die naked just as we are born. While this is true of material things, this is not true of all that we will have done for the spiritual value of our existence, the love we will have been able to give to others, and the good we will have done. These will not be tangible values, but they will surely be more valuable than any property or material good we have gained. So for a moment, let us get off the merry-go-round of life and do an exercise that always works and makes us immediately aware of what direction our life has taken and in what direction we would eventually like to channel it. So let us stop and imagine for a moment that we are consciously present at our own funeral. A crowd of people, relatives, friends, children, grandchildren, and even people whose presence we would not have imagined. With what words would we want to be remembered? What is the message and contribution made by our existence to ourselves, our evolution, mission? How many people, near or far, have been able to breathe better in their lives because of our words and actions? What do you want to be remembered about you and your life? Stop and think about the answer. You might feel fear in becoming aware of the road you have traveled so far, or you might even immediately close your eyes forever and know that you have given any value to your existence. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to reopen your eyes and move forward, knowing that time and our energy are precious resources that must be consciously used to value why we came into existence on this journey called life. With this knowledge, dive back into the river of life now and decide on which bank you want to land. The face in the mirror. Just as a compass tells a sailor the direction of his boat in the middle of the ocean, so there is for each of us an indicator that can give us an answer as to how we are progressing in our lives. How many times have we glanced fleetingly at ourselves in the mirror, immediately lowering our gaze as if something is telling us that something is wrong? How many times instead have we caught in our eyes like a glow, a firmness and a strength that revealed everything we wanted to know about ourselves, as if it had been a snapshot of our soul? If there is one point in the depths of ourselves that is most in touch with the world, it is our gaze. Just stop in front of a mirror and observe our own face, our own gaze, trying to catch the smallest nuances of feelings and emotions that it can convey to us. As windows to the soul, through our eyes we can stand and look at our inner world, our frustrations, our joy, our love, our faith and determination, as well as our degree of centering in the flow of our existence. We should look every day, at least once, at our soul in the mirror. We should every day stop and question what is behind our gaze, as if we were to kneel before a child trying to understand his or her mood and needs. Through our eyes and our face in the mirror, we can accept ourselves, reproach ourselves, love ourselves. There is a beautiful poem by an anonymous person that renders well the power of looking in front of a mirror, and I like to quote it here. The face in the mirror. When you get what you want in the struggle to get, and the world makes you king for a day. Go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that face has to say. Because it is not to the judgment of your father or your mother or your spouse that you have to submit. The person whose verdict matters most in life is the one who looks at you from the mirror. Some people may think that you are one who goes straight to the goal and say you are great. But the face in the mirror says you're just a fool if you can't look yourself straight in the eye. He is the one who has to like you, no matter all the others. He is the one who is in front of you until the end. And you will know that you have passed the most difficult test if the face in the mirror is your friend. You may fool the whole world along the path and get pats on the back as you pass. But the ultimate reward will be tears and despair if you have deceived the face in the mirror. Pruning. I was on business in Florence to visit a trade show concerning fitness and wellness. I was there to turn around, for better or worse, a job of mine that had lasted years of dreams and commitments. I was there in the hope that something would happen and tell me which path to take for that business that was ready for any turn. I was wandering around the fair, filled with booths devoted to new body training techniques, miraculous new supplements, and everything related to the world of being as a result of appearing. I had been part of that world too. But now, amid the deafening music and the directions shouted at microphones by presenters, I felt out of my natural habitat and the one I love, the green woods, the sea, and anywhere that can make me feel and appreciate the blowing of the wind and the lapping of the waters. I was looking for a change in that project of mine, even a pruning. Pruning, in gardening as in life, should not be scary. If a branch is completely dry and we have watered it to the best of our ability, it must be cut. It is not a barbaric and unnatural work, but a physiological and necessary work if we want to give a boost to the birth of the new. The act of pruning removes what is now dead and no longer has reason to be dragged along. It is amazing to see how often the mere act of pruning something in one's life makes room for some good newness. Only by creating emptiness can space be made for fullness. Often the emptiness must be made within ourselves. We need to get rid of old ties and thoughts that no longer have any reason to exist and bring any benefit to anyone. Pruning is an act of great courage and faith about the opportunities and potential of life. After all, since the beginning of time, life has been doing this in a cyclical and natural way, in natural evolution, in the changing of the seasons, and in the very lives of men. Only man often remains desperately and stubbornly attached to pieces of the past that are now ghosts in the present. At the time of writing, I am on the train from Florence that will take me back to Rome, and I do not know if my trip to this fair will bring me clarity on this possible pruning and renewal of my project. What I'm asking for at this time is clarity on what to do. Continue watering. Proceed to prune, or turn it over to a new gardener who can do better than I have been able to do. Time and energy are not unlimited in a man's life, which is why it is necessary every now and then to stop and decide what to bring or leave behind in the backpack of commitments, thoughts, and ties we carry along the path of our lives. In the end, not much is needed. Love and passion for life so that we can walk more serene and expeditious on the journey toward our self-realization. But, above all, enjoy the scenery. When the student is ready. I remember when I met my first life teacher at a time when I was feeling confused and depressed. I longed for him to manifest himself in my existence to give me guidance and suggestions about life and its paths. I imagined him as a tall, mighty man with a long cloak, just as one would imagine him in a novel or movie. The master shortly thereafter manifested himself in a place where I never imagined he would be. Little by little he gained my esteem and my ear. From him shone the love that grants and asks nothing in return. He was always willing to listen to me patiently and give me his wise point of view. He advised me, but told me to listen to myself and find the answers within myself. No master who loves his pupil would make him dependent on his teachings and charismatic figure. He wants the pupil to walk by himself. He may come alongside him for a period of time, but never spoil him with his support. The destiny of every pupil is to one day become a master himself, and this is how my master behaved with me. He would show me the steps and possible paths, but I was the one who had to feel them within me and choose them. He would patiently let knowledge and awareness about a particular subject sprout within me, as the gardener waters the flowers, confident that sooner or later the flower will open. My first teacher was a woman, a lady with an irrepressible smile and zest for life. Her good energy preceded her, and everyone instinctively recognized her nature. I would not have met her if I had not sought her with my heart. I would not have recognized her if I had not shed expectations of her figure. As with friendships and love, it is the heart that shows us the way. Just stop and listen to it so as to regain eyes to see and ears to hear. Life always surprises those who are alert to catch its signs. Intense desire, whatever it is, for better or worse, is like a beacon in the night that sooner or later shows us what we want. I asked for a master, and it was granted to me. I was granted by the desire for his guidance and counsel. When the student is ready, the master appears. Learn art. My hands are sore, and I struggle to write these words. Despite the use of gloves, some scratches are furrowing my hands and wrists. I have just returned from a day's work in the countryside, helping my brother clean up brambles and unnecessary branches. Also today I had an important lesson on the art of making, that is, the importance of finding and using the secrets to do what you do best, whatever it is. The lesson was given to me by a farmer who, seeing me laboriously trying to saw off some branches growing at the base of a tree, pointed out that that was not the right technique. First of all, he told me not to use the saw but an axe, and then to hit the base of the branch I wanted to cut with a sharp blow. See? He showed me, you have to take aim and with a sharp blow, prune the branch from the base. Nothing could be more true and effective. With that technique, I was then able to do twice the work with half the effort I would have done if I had had to laboriously saw off each branch. From this, I understood the tremendous importance of learning the right technique for what one is doing, whether one is doing something ordinary or something seemingly extraordinary to untrained eyes and hands. I am reminded many years ago of when I was in school and was attracted by a little book in which they explained the moves to be able to quickly and safely complete the famous Rubik's Cube, that game in which one has to succeed in putting the colors in the various faces of a cube in order after mixing them. It is an almost impossible task for the intelligence of almost 99% of people to do. Thanks to that book, I had mastered that technique so well that I could put the colors of the cube back in order in just over a minute and a half, regardless of how they were mixed. A real feat, considering that, I am sure, if it had been a task required of a sample of 1,000 people, only 3 of us, including myself, would have succeeded. The interesting and curious thing is that I was by no means smarter than these hypothetical 1,000 other people, but, precisely because of the technique, I had managed to accumulate with a little practice the experience and knowledge necessary to successfully complete such an operation, for all intents and purposes defined as very complex. The real pearl of wisdom here is to understand that for everything there is a right technique of execution, and once you find it and practice it for a while, you can really approach the state of the art in what you do. In today's age of easy exchange of information, this is even easier. Just find a master, a book, or an article that explains it, and then it becomes just a matter of trust and perseverance in practice. One of the secrets of the magic of doing is this: learn the art by practicing the techniques until they become part of you. Only then, perhaps, will you be surprised that you have become a master in that very art. The peace of the spirit. Yesterday I accompanied a friend of mine to a large cemetery on the outskirts of Rome. She wanted to visit a young friend of hers who had died in a tragic traffic accident caused by a madman driving against the hand on a high-speed road. Because of the heavy traffic, we arrived 10 minutes after the cemetery entrance time. We tried in vain to find some secondary entrance that was not already barred, and that would allow even a minute of recollection in front of that headstone. It was not possible for us. We stopped in front of a secondary gate that gave into a particular corner of the cemetery. The sun was now setting, casting the last rays of light that flooded that corner of the cemetery with peace, a corner of the cemetery where there was an infinite calm and sense of peace. There were trees, a small chapel, a few gravestones, bathed in the mysterious light of the dying sun. The only evidence of life beyond that gate was a cat watching us curiously and almost fascinated. We prayed for that friend of his and for all the deceased in there. I asked my friend if, in her opinion, by dying, one truly finds peace. The answer was affirmative for her. But what truly is peace of mind and what truly grants rest to the spirit? Standing in front of that glimpse of the holy field, immersed in timeless silence, I realized that true peace of spirit can be given to us by our personal integrity, our honesty, and our commitment to ourselves, others, and life. As long as we act on our deepest instincts, which often reveal themselves as a hidden fire, trying day after day not to extinguish it by distractions and false goals shown by society, but to make it grow, we will be on the right path. As long as our heart beats for something that makes every fiber of our being vibrate, then we will be alive. And one day, when faced with death, we will have no regrets about what we should have done by following our inner truth. Then we will have achieved peace, that peace that allows us to close our eyes and surrender to the infinite, in the certainty that we will have been ourselves, and that, sooner or later, our spirit will be able to shine again in the light of the sun. The secret of the wave. The secrets of life are so obvious that we do not see them. They are so present in our lives that we take them for granted, losing the teaching and wisdom behind them. More on hidden truths. The whole of existence is characterized by cycles that repeat incessantly. In the world, in the cosmos, and in our lives, everything is cyclical. The ancient Taoist masters symbolized this concept with the symbol of the Tao, which is the sphere with a wave inside that divides it into two equal parts, one white and one black, the opposites. And in each part there is a dot of the opposite color, as if to signify that in everything there is at least one part of its opposite. Symbols have always been powerful tools in the hands of those who have been able to read them, and their influence has shaped even those who have consciously failed to understand them, going on to imbue deep knowledge inherent in every human being. But what good is philosophy, knowledge, if we do not put them into practice in our everyday lives, and if we do not put them at the service of our lives? To nothing. How do we put the awareness of the cyclical nature of all things into our service? The alternation of opposites. We need to put the great laws, the great secrets into the perspective of daily life. Then and only then will we be able to make sense of our life music, building a stave that gives melody and meaning to our daily actions and thoughts. Spurts of faith and hope, as well as moments of stasis and doubt, will acquire greater meaning, and we will then be able to have the strength to begin a new cycle of existence again. The alternation of day and night, of our breaths, the beating of our hearts, the dying and rising of our faith and hope, are but some representations of that cosmic law that permeates life, and of which we must become aware if we are to go along with the wave of change. In life, the only true constant is change itself, so it is up to us to adapt to it, respecting and accepting the cyclical nature of things. In today's life, there are two ways of being, the one brought to action, exaggerating it to excess, and the one brought to resignation, to passive surrender to the events of life. Harmony is in the middle. We need to be active in pursuing our plans, our dreams, at least until the tide recedes and tells us to wait on the shore for the arrival of a new phase. It takes great wisdom to be able to recognize the various waves of change, and to be able to alternate between active and passive phases. We often fail to do this and find ourselves swimming against the current, when it would be easier to surrender to the flow of things and resume swimming in our own direction as soon as the current itself has passed. A current that is sometimes in our favor, even if in the moment we fail to understand the direction in which it wants to channel us. The secret of the wave is to understand that the best way to proceed in things is to adapt to it. That is, to swim up to its crest and then let yourself slide down as an experienced surfer would do in the ocean. In this way, it will be easier to ride the waves and flow into the sea of life. Waiting for the dawn. Today is the last day of the year, and this time I decided to spend it alone, away from the city. I decided to start the new year by fasting and seeking in silence and solitude a greater connection with myself and with the majestic force that animates the universe. Present man moves to the rhythm of the festivals and celebrations that society imposes on him, moving him like a puppet at its command. Do you want man not to see himself and his life? Wrap him in the sweet music of Christmas and tell him that without a carousel on New Year's Eve, his life will be empty and meaningless. Actually, the last day of the year is the time when everyone should find the strength on his own to look at everything he has done and not done in the time that has passed. Everyone should have the courage on this momentous day to ask himself whether he has honored the life within him. That is, whether he has followed his deepest instinct to embrace his life's purpose. Solitude and fasting, alternating with the joy of being in the midst of crowds and friends, be a powerful means of introspection and growth. Man must find himself in the midst of the endless distractions that draw him away from the divine spark that burns within him and yearns to shine. Aware that existence is made up of cyclical movements, I plunge into silence and contemplation, waiting for the dawn of a new year and a new existence. A new time that will see me roaring and galloping toward the ever fuller expression of my life. The Wings of Freedom. If there is one film I love, it is Wings of Liberty. A film that they should show in schools, trying to get kids to understand the deep meanings it holds. The story is about a man, unjustly imprisoned for life on a murder charge, who gradually creates his own path to freedom. The air of the prison in which he is enclosed is heavy, as I think is heavy in all prisons around the world. One thing in particular differentiates the protagonist Andy Dufresne from everyone else. He has a dream and is willing to work on it as few would be able to do. Step by step, inch by inch he builds, unbeknown to anyone, his road to freedom. He does this by digging a long tunnel in the wall of his cell and then crawling hundreds of feet into a sewer pipe. I find it great. I think it sets an example for all those who want to escape from the existential prison where they find themselves caged. As the protagonist says, it takes pressure and time. This brings me to the meaning of the title, The Wings of Freedom. But what are these wings? While I have no doubt what a wing represents, the meaning of the second one makes me think of various meanings. While the first wing is definitely represented by the power of perseverance, it takes pressure and time. As the protagonist says, that is, that every day you make an effort, a step forward toward the direction you want to take. For the second wing, I have various interpretations, all of which I think are accurate. One of the wings of freedom can be seen as the faith that one day one can achieve one's goal, one's freedom. It is important to learn to look beyond the wall and embrace one's vision, a quality few people have, as most people remain looking all their lives at the wall, or the limits of their existence, without being able to imagine what lies beyond. Sometimes going beyond can certainly be scary, but not if beyond is our heart and soul. If that is the case, it is necessary to have the vision and slowly build our way beyond our own limits and boundaries. If this were not the case, we would be condemned to live in the narrow confines of our own prison, our own chicken coop, while knowing inside that we are eagles and not chickens and have wings to fly. Even if we were chickens who think they are eagles, I like to believe that one can still toughen one's feathers and be able to enjoy, after careful training, the pleasure of flight. It is my belief that life continually creates opportunities that we often do not notice, and even if it does not, we should be the ones to create them with faith, vision, and above all, perseverance. Eagles or chickens that we are, we must be the ones to discover or train our wings. Otherwise, we will always be forced in life to see everything from a narrow and limited view, when instead we could savor and enjoy endless and fascinating landscapes. The biggest bet. Yesterday I succumbed to the temptation to play the game of lotto. Believing 3 numbers I had come across during the day to be significant, I thought, well, after all, I can give it a try if I'm lucky. I put a small amount of money on a straight trio. Today I checked the result of the draws and was amazed at how out of all the numbers that came up, I got only 1 right. A record, but a negative one. This does not surprise me at all. If I am to expect a win or a gift from life, I certainly do not expect it from a national game that earns the state millions from people betting on everything but the most important thing, their lives. We are born with a given number of breaths and heartbeats that we can rely on to live our existences. Of course, we can do much to shorten or increase them. Nutrition, lifestyle, goals. But the focal point, which I want to dwell on, is another. What do we do with our breaths and heartbeats throughout our lives? In what things do we believe, fight, hope? With what strength do we love, smile, and indulge? With what strength do we shake the hand of those who hold it out to us with open and sincere friendship? All this I think about in front of the piece of paper in my hand, the receipt on which are written the numbers I bet on, and the price paid. The price paid how? Much does it cost us to bet on a game so random and far from ourselves? Perhaps the sum of all the bets lost, subtracted from the few, indeed very few bets won. No, the price paid is much greater. As much greater as the value we place on our energies, and on our time spent away from finding ourselves and achieving the higher values that govern our lives. Those who play and gamble, hoping for a breakthrough in their lives, subjugate their success and achievement and luck to chance, to pure chance. But luck and chance are not blind, and with some exceptions, they affect the life of the one who has behind him countless hours spent working, hoping, believing in some project. To the one who has chosen to follow himself and to bet on his dreams. Those who play the game think, it costs me nothing to bet on the game, I can go on with my life anyway and leave the door open to a breakthrough, to victory. But this is an illusion. He leaves a door open to victory and breakthrough. He who consecrates himself and his success only to himself and not to fortuitous chance. Buying a lottery ticket or playing bingo is a way of denying one's potential and selling a part of oneself, an important and fundamental part. The one that gives us the knowledge that time spent working hard and tenaciously on ourselves and our talents may one day rise and sprout from the ground and then open to the light like a gorgeous flower. From there we will draw fruit, tasting its flavor. An overwhelming flavor, that of victory. Victory in the greatest wager, that of our lives. The universe within us. I log onto the internet, check my mail, and I am amazed and fascinated. Every day I receive dozens of letters from my readers asking me questions on various topics, or thanking me for benefiting from what I have written. With some of them I often maintain a correspondence that makes me feel their presence in my life as if they were old friends. I am amazed at times, before this bond born thanks to the internet and the dissemination of my books. It is as if my life becomes an increasingly dense spider web whose threads represent a connection with one of my readers. I am surprised, as this could not have happened in the past, at least not as easily as in today's world thanks to the internet, which represents a real web around the world. I then think of the potential developments in technology and those in the potential of human beings. I am sure that a day will come when we ourselves will be able to communicate and connect to the people and circumstances necessary for our development and evolution. This phenomenon of interconnectedness already happens and is operating today, although no one or few realize it. Chance, in the sense of pure and uncontrolled randomness, perhaps does not exist. Synchronicity, that is, the manifestation of significant coincidences for a person, is perhaps the rational and scientific explanation for the manifestation of divine providence, as if it were a kind of resonance with our inner chords. Everyone, one day, will be able to consciously create the events of his or her life, and will no longer feel at the mercy of blind fate. But perhaps it will first be necessary for man to develop his degree of responsibility to others, and to his own life. Being conscious creators implies a certain degree of responsibility, and perhaps God has hidden these gifts deep within ourselves, waiting for each soul to blossom and finally find it within itself. If one day we will have a conscious mental connection with other beings, it will only be through becoming aware of the power of imagination, that is, of going beyond one's own limitations. Our imagination is, for all intents and purposes, an antenna that connects us to places, people, and events that will sooner or later manifest in our lives. Very few people today realize the power of the images our mind projects on the screen of our future. As often the imagination is not focused on something, or not focused long enough. In addition to this, besides the intensity of the focus and its repetition, time often elapses to the actual materialization of a certain person or event in one's life, so much so that the causal connection is lost. God, or whatever force has created us, has given us the gift of imagination to make us conscious creators of our lives. Those who can realize this great power and learn to use it will become the conscious creator of their world. The material manifestation, the physical universe, is only a shadow reflecting higher orders and laws. If we had eyes and a mind open enough to understand the meanings and laws hidden in every material thing, we would hold the laws of creation in our hands. As high so low, said the ancient alchemists. Watch a leaf fall and you can understand the force of gravity. Watch the internet and you can understand the present and the future potential for connecting with people and events. Past, present, and future are mirrors of the same instant. The universe and our future are already within us. To seek is to find, to imagine is to create. I turn off my computer now and close my eyes, imagining my destiny. John Milton, one May morning in 1944. I walk slowly on the immense lawn that stretches out in every direction, as if not wanting to disturb them. I review what remains of these men, whose lives were sacrificed in the name of their homeland. An immense number of crosses and stars of David in this place that possesses a palpable sacredness. I find myself in the Sicily, Rome Monumental Cemetery in Neptune. In this place it seems as if time has stopped, and I am somewhere out of this world. Stepping through the huge gate, the view is enraptured by a surreal landscape. Trees, a small artificial lake, a mausoleum, and a boundless meadow, strewn with thousands of crosses and stars, engraved with the names of those who participated in the Anzio landing during World War II. I walk slowly across the lawn, paying respect to these men, many of them boys, whose lives were wiped out in a moment on a May morning. I look at the names and the home state of these soldiers. I stop in front of a white cross and one of gleaming marble that calls to me. It is that of John Milton, Missouri, who fell in May 1944. I see through his eyes. He is huddled in a landing craft, weapon in hand, along with a group of his fellow soldiers. The noise of the engine is loud, but even louder is the roar of the cannons and machine guns of the enemy, lurking on the coast and waiting for them. He closes his eyes and thinks that one cannon shot, fired at that boat, could wipe out everyone in a single moment. But he does not want to die. He wants to live. He has a young wife and a newborn daughter waiting for him at home. He has his friends, the lifelong friends with whom he grew up and became a man. He has that magical place, his refuge, where he loves to go to savor the warm afternoon sun that hides among the fields and makes him feel the beauty of being alive. He does not believe in war, and he does not want to kill anyone. And here on this boat, like everyone else is here, to serve the country. Suddenly he feels a strong jolt and is jolted forward, pressing his comrades in front of him and feeling the weight of those behind. Lo and behold, the landing craft has touched bottom sand. It is time to disembark and conquer the enemy lines, just as had been explained in a briefing to him and the others by his commander. Everything can be resolved in half a day of fighting, perhaps less. The important thing is to advance quickly from a secure position that offers cover to the next one. The most critical moment, all of them are aware, is the moment of disembarkation, when you can be an easy target of any rifle or machine gun in range. John Milton is excited. He knows it is a crucial moment in his life. Never did he expect to find himself in such a distressing situation. He is afraid, but he throws it behind him in order to accomplish his mission, and then, finally return home. Already he feels the excitement of his train pulling up, and as he leaps off, he catches a glimpse in the festive crowd of his beloved wife's face with their little daughter in her arms. He runs to her, already feeling on his hands her soft skin, her scent, the unmistakable taste of her kisses. He has many, many plans to start with her. It is so real that it feels like he is already there. Suddenly, a splash of water brings him back to harsh reality. They are on the low, sandy shore, and amidst the din, there is the sound of the hatch opening. It is the moment, a moment that will mark John's life forever. The hatch is down, and everyone is running, guns drawn, toward the shoreline, shooting wildly. His heart almost bursts with emotion, fear, and excitement. Many comrades ahead of him fall dead on the sand. Splashes of blood hit him full in the face. Now time stands still. An explosion. John falls, a cloud of sand envelops him, hurled in every direction. Excruciating pain grips him, but he does not understand what has happened. He is now on the ground, his face sunk into the sand, screaming in pain. The cloud of sand has descended. Instinctively he clutches his leg that was almost cleanly severed by the explosion. From the knee down, there are only bloody shreds of flesh. He loses a lot of blood and is still conscious, but time is almost still, as if going on frame by frame. There is no sound anymore. What he hears is only his labored breathing, his screams of pain and anger. He is losing a lot of blood. His consciousness is failing him, and perhaps his life as well. No one can take care of him in the midst of that chaos. Everyone runs away and advances for their own lives. He knows it has come to an end. He begins to cry, an immense grief of anger and regret. His life, his wife, his daughter, his friends. His dreams, hopes, sunsets are now all lost. Lost in an instant, on a pale sandy beach, 1,000 miles away from home. Inside him there is no longer a drop of blood. Now the sand next to him is all soaked with it. By now he is unconscious, at a point of death. The last thing that falls on that red mantle beneath him is a tear. I gather that tear now, to show it to you who read, so that you may understand the absurdity of war and work for a world of peace and harmony, so that no man will ever raise his hand to another man again. The gateway to paradise. It is extraordinary to think how God, the Supreme Creator, has put the source of our power, our health, and our joy right before our eyes, without anyone noticing. To be precise, He put it right under our noses. It is from our very nose that we perform that simple and primordial act that, repeated incessantly in every moment of our lives, becomes a matter of course and unknown to us, like a background sound to which we no longer give importance. I am talking about the act of breathing. It is really what accompanies us throughout the entire span of our lives, from the first breath of birth to the last breath of oblivion. Breathing is so closely connected to life that we don't even notice it. Yesterday, I consciously reconnected with my breath, doing a breathing session that some people call rebirthing, although there are many other valid schools as well. I lay down and began to breathe consciously and with a firm rhythm, trying to maintain my breathing and trying not to fall asleep. The results always surprise me, even though I have been studying the effects of breathing for years now, searching biochemistry, physiology, and yogic breathing texts for its secret. By consciously continuing to breathe, trying to make inhalation connected with exhalation, I have reached the point where all tensions, worries, and thoughts melt away into the wind. Here is the magic of breathing. If one does not have excessive baggage of somatized tensions in the body, and in this case it would take a classy number of sessions, one can easily reach a level of ecstasy, joy, and love that is indescribable. This sounds too good to be true, but I wonder how many people in the world today find the time to meet their inner world through conscious breathing sessions. My rational mind urges me, now as in the past, to try to understand how this miracle can happen. So I consult specialized texts, and here and there, scientific studies available from the internet. I come to the conclusion that the key to everything is oxygen. This small molecule present since the beginning of life on planet Earth. I am convinced that it is the source of the vital energy we accumulate in the body and organs, and it is the source of our acting and feeling. The ancient concept of Indian prana and chi, or ki of different cultures, I think can be summarized in the amount of oxygen we are able to retain in our tissues and blood. But for what purpose do I ask these things and make these arguments? The purpose is serenity and inner balance. If, as I am convinced, all of our life depends on vital energy, then oxygen, which is its source, is the key. But all these words are empty without direct personal experience. Everyone must experience for himself what it means to consciously enter a state of bliss. In our lives, we try to open all possible doors without even looking for the door of our inner self. Breathing is, in my opinion, one of the doors God has granted us to improve ourselves and heal our lives, as well as allowing us a brief and fleeting glimpse of what heaven might be. Moving forward. I received yet another polite rejection from one of the many large publishing houses I contacted to publish my 3 recent works. Every time I read the emails and see that there is a response from a publisher, it is like playing Russian roulette. Either you get it right and they publish you, or they hit you with those standardized phrases of polite rejection, in which they tell you that they already have a similar book in their catalog or that your book does not reflect their editorial output. Instead, it would be better if they criticized, even harshly, but in detail, what you have written so that you can then be able to see where you need to improve, or whether, in the worst cases, you should drop everything and get busy in some other field. My bodywork manuals have been published so far, but I feel it is time for a change. I feel like writing about feelings, emotions, and spirit. Although I have paved my way with manuals, I believe it is right to trust myself and follow my emotions on where the keyboard allows itself to be brushed and tapped with more motivation, feeling, and pleasure. I know I have to start all over again, studying the art of writing through the great writers, before whom I pale every time I read one of their works. I wonder if their genius and extraordinary creative ability was innate in them, or acquired through passion in the study and practice of writing itself. I decide to believe in the second hypothesis, which gives me hope for a better future. Every book should have in itself a reason for being, to justify the paper that is used and the cost incurred by each reader. Otherwise, it is good to remain in the limbo of books never published and read. A book should contribute in some way to change one more part of the reader's spirit, and it should help him or her live better in his or her journey of life and evolution. That is what I try to convey with what I write. That is what I try to convey with this journal. I am going forward, gathering myself, no matter where I get to. What I know for sure is that I will follow my instincts, and I will make sure that my hands keep gliding over the letters on the keyboard, following every thought and emotion that I feel I am conveying to my reader. Everything flows. Do you remember that shabby old lady who made me disappointed when I was about to give him money, cursing at me because I was running in a place where, in her opinion, one should not run? I met her this morning, in the same spot where I had met her last time. Want to know how it went? Acknowledging her sympathetically, I brought my biggest smile to her, greeting her. She enthusiastically returned the greeting, as if we had known each other all our lives, and I was her grandson. Moral: everything flows in life. Sometimes small rifts and misunderstandings are the result of the situation, and especially the mood of the moment. Sometimes all it takes is to let a night pass, and everything regains its proper perspective. We are the fruit of our emotions and perspectives. Change them and it will change with them your world and the way you relate to it, even after only a night of calm rest. Find yourself. I walk the streets of the world and observe people, who among them really knows himself. I am Mario Rossi, a respected bank officer. I spent 10 long years of my life working my way up through the ranks as a clerk, then moving up the ranks as I am now. I have always been punctual. I enter the office before everyone else and leave almost last to take care of the last tasks of my workday. My boss esteems and trusts me. Some colleagues envy me for the place of respect I now occupy. Others take me as a role model. In the evening on my way home, I do some shopping and take it to my wife, with whom I discuss the day's events more and less. The children are now grown up, and I often do not see them as they are almost always out and about, especially in the evenings they meet for drinks with friends. Evening arrives and the shadows grow longer and longer until, tired in body and spirit, despite the fact that the day has not been all that tiring, Mr. Mario abandons his mind to deep sleep, a sleep in which at times he almost feels the need to abandon himself without an end. Tomorrow will be another day in which I will have to work and carry on my image as a bank officer. Indefatigable, precise, and blameless, Mario thinks, in the last glimmers of consciousness before sleep. Meanwhile, sleep overtakes, and finally the chains of the mind are loosened more and more, until what remains of Mr. Mario's heart emerges. The heart, suffering, speaks to him, "Mario, why have you abandoned me? Listen, as long as I can still whisper these words to you. When you no longer hear them, it will mean that hope will die in your life, and you will be forced to begin again, in a new place and time. 1,000 times I have spoken to you, and 1,000 times you have turned your attention elsewhere. Perhaps you are still in time to bring to light in your life what you really are, and what you really came to do in this merry-go-round called the world. Listen to me while there is still time. Free yourself from the conventions and limitations of your world. Free yourself from your parents' expectations, from society's expectations, and perhaps for the first time in your life, ask yourself what you really want to do with your existence. The measure of the value of a life is given by how long you have stopped to listen to your heart, and what really important thing you have been able to do by listening to it." Mr. Mario's sleep suddenly began to stir, as if stirred by subterranean currents of his consciousness that had never subsided. At first light the alarm rang, and Mr. Mario awoke as if from a heavy nightmare. He had seen his life betrayed by a direction he never wanted to take. He then put his feet into his slippers, a punctual operation he had been doing for 20 years now, and crinkling his eyes, he completely woke up, diving back into the clothes of Mr. Mario Rossi, punctual, indefatigable, and irreproachable bank clerk, esteemed by his work colleagues and society. A bad dream, he thought to himself, and his distraught heart grew farther and farther away, until it was silent forever. I have to be on time again this morning, and the boss has to see me already at work as soon as he arrives. I am accruing my pension, and finally, before long, I will be free to do what I really want. Images came to his mind when he liked to paint as a boy. It was an ecstatic feeling when he saw a new shade of color in his canvas. It was as if the brush went alone on the white surface. It was as if the portraits and landscapes he painted flowed from the depths of his soul. It was as if his heart, then young and joyful, was constantly speaking to him in images, and he painted them with ecstatic enthusiasm. Those were good times. He felt happy and looked forward to leaping out of bed in the morning to complete what he felt was his own work of art. In the meantime, Mr. Rossi heard the coffee coming out and hurriedly drank a cup, and then launched into a run toward what could now be considered his second home, the office. Time continued to pass relentlessly, and his heart had not spoken to him for some time, dried up now like a dry leaf. The day came when his exhausted body and spirit were about to leave him. His children and his wife were beside him, and the eldest was telling him that the bank branch manager wanted to summon him for a job interview, precisely because he knew the value and self-sacrifice of the Rossi family, shown by his father over a lifetime of irreproachable work. Then poor Mr. Mario, with the last of his strength, asked for a pen and paper and began to write, as he no longer had even the strength to speak. The father's last words, written on that paper, were addressed to his eldest son: "Find yourself and do what you truly feel you are doing in life. Consecrate it to your heart and to what it asks of you. Do not be afraid, but throw yourself into life. You may die with the regret of never having lived." Mr. Mario then rested his pen on that paper and closed his eyes forever, leaving impressed on his son that one phrase that his heart had whispered to him every day of his life, and that he had never had the courage to hear: find yourself. Nothing taken for granted in life. Sometimes I am amazed at how life can whisper its messages to us even in unusual contexts. I was strolling through the booths of a fitness trade show, all dedicated to the well-being of the body. Normally, at these fairs, relevance is given to outward appearance and the pure, narcissistic taste of showing off an almost perfect physique and shape. In this context, it would have been difficult to have an important message from life, and thus input to think about. At one point, I stopped by a booth dedicated to seeking funds for the creation of an American football team dedicated to wheelchair users. After making my bid, I was asked if I would like to participate in a wheelchair race. The race, aimed at able-bodied people, consisted of doing a wheelchair course in the shortest possible time. The obstacles of the course were to, again in a wheelchair, open and close a door, slalom between poles, hang clothes on a coat rack, shoot a basket with a ball, and in the last section, overcome small architectural barriers consisting of steps, a sand and a gravel section. Result of the competition, I was not among the top scorers. When I was about to leave, after saying goodbye to the jury, the organizer of that project, who is disabled in a wheelchair, approached me and said, "Have you seen how difficult it is? You have to take nothing for granted in life." Well, I thought I had done them a favor in competing in that singular competition. But with those final words, I had done myself a favor. On that occasion, I had remembered something I already knew, but had forgotten, that nowhere is far from the messages and teachings that life can give us. That many who are considered able-bodied live in a mentally disabled way, compared to many disabled people who make their spirits soar. That, thanks to the words given to me by that organizer, nothing should be taken for granted in life, just as mere architectural barriers are not for a disabled person in a wheelchair. Being able to walk on one's own legs by a non-disabled person should not be. Legs for the body are like the spirit going through life. If you have it, use them as long as you can move them. Use and appreciate every single thing in your life while you have it. We often look to the new and desire it at all costs, suffering if it does not come. But it would be more appropriate to bless life for the things it has already granted us that we no longer see because they have become taken for granted. So, let us thank life for the things it has so far bestowed upon us. Let us pray that we may be worthy of the future blessings it still wants to bestow upon us. And above all, let us learn to take nothing in our lives for granted. Power of reading. This morning I went to a large shopping mall. I usually love to dive into bookstores and let my eyes run over the high shelves of books, looking for something to inspire me. I have always had a passion for reading and owning books, almost a morbid passion for me. It is difficult for me to leave a bookstore without buying a book. I think it is fortunate for everyone to be able to dive into the pages of an author who can give us the distillation of his or her knowledge, or give us a mirror to help us see inside ourselves. Few know such a great opportunity that everyone has nowadays to sit in the company of the thoughts of people far away in space and time. Until a few years ago, it would have been unthinkable. You can learn the secrets of a trade, its theoretical foundations, tricks and strategies, and get to know the way of thinking of the one who has been successful in that field. You can dive into someone's life as if he were telling you about it, almost as if he were your friend. Reading is a powerful tool for personal enrichment and growth. At first, reading can be a mechanical process, but if the subject matter suits us and meets a need, as we read, our eyes and thoughts fly free like seagulls in the sky. Reading can open us up to unknown worlds, to sensations we were unaware of, and perhaps would never have known without the work of the one who made it concrete in the pages of a book. Reading is a powerful tool placed in the hands of the one who wishes to rise from mediocrity. A mediocrity that arises from that current of thoughtlessness that seems to want to take hold of us through the mass media, television in the first place. I do not think there is a worse way of non-existence than to drown one's brain in the quagmire of junk television programs. Everyone should discover the pleasure of walking through a bookstore in search of a voice that is ready to whisper, "Hey friend, I have something to tell you that might interest you and change your life." Or, "I've been waiting for a long time for you to come in here and walk past this shelf. Take me with you, and I'll introduce you to worlds and sensations that you ignore." So trust your intuition and let your feelings guide you. Go to a bookstore, look for an area that interests you, and run your eyes over the book titles. Then pick one up, read it here and there, and listen to what it conveys to you. Maybe there is someone ready to tell you something. The hidden truths. This morning I phoned a very dear friend of mine, Furio, who I had not heard from in a while. He is my father's age, but given his spirit, I feel like he is my age. In talking, he gave me an opportunity to reflect on what are the great hidden truths of life, which, if ignored, can destroy you and wear you down slowly, in body and spirit, but if listened to and followed, can lead you toward a full, fulfilling, and healthy life. These truths are hidden, for they seem so obvious that they escape our attention, most of the time, at least until we come up against them, before their force, and pay the consequences. He was telling me about life lived from a 67-year-old's perspective. What better opportunity than to take advantage of and try to treasure the perspective of someone who is a few steps ahead of you and who has had a few more lessons than you? We were talking about health and body maintenance. Although he was in good shape, he regretted that he had neglected his level of physical health from the time of his maturity onward, despite having done a lot of sports in his youth. Some people say they did a lot of sports when they were young, and they think they are exempt from continuing to develop and maintain it throughout their lives, he said. He added, as if one eats only in youth and no longer in maturity. One must continue to care for the body in order to maintain excellent health until old age. This seems, indeed is, a truth hidden behind its apparent clarity and evidence. Listening to it, one thinks, it is indeed true, but everyone knows this. Well, there is a need to reflect on this concept. Everybody knows it. How many hidden truths, wrongly taken for granted, exist in life, and on which we dwell only for a moment, without making them part of our existence? How many and what benefits can honoring such great and fundamental truths bring us? Or conversely, how much harm can ignoring them and taking them for granted bring us? We are children of our daily habits and the truths we make our own every day. This is a great truth, perhaps the greatest because it encapsulates them all. It takes discernment and discipline to achieve anything in life. Discernment to recognize what are our truths and those to which we want to stick. Discipline, for without it life is like a piano without willing and eager hands to learn its music. Even what comes into our hands, as if it were an unexpected gift, is the fruit of something that was already born long ago within ourselves as a thought and a feeling. Often such thoughts are hidden from consciousness, as they are disturbed by background noise consisting of false goals, often imposed by society or unconscious programming, passively endured since childhood. The goal is to find our truths and put them into practice in life day after day, as if it were a daily prayer. Only then can life become what we truly want. Only when the great hidden truths are recognized for their great value will they become the sails of our existence and enable us to reach out and discover those distant seas that await us, and which, perhaps without them, we would never have reached. Live now, for of tomorrow there is no certainty. One morning I met Andrea, one of my brothers, who told me something that I think is worth reflecting on. The previous day he had gone to a church to ask for spiritual advice about life. He had found a priest, deputy pastor of that church, who had told him to appreciate life as it is, committing in the present moment to what can be done, and to accept with faith what cannot be changed. After all, the priest had added, life is only a passage, and we need to be aware of this in order to better appreciate the present moment. So far, besides the great truth of those words, nothing unusual. Finally, the vice parish priest had given my brother a medal of Our Lady, since that day was Our Lady's feast day, and he had also given him sheets of Holy Scripture to reflect and have comfort on the evils of the world. The next morning the priest was gone, having died in a rather strange circumstance. He had returned the previous evening to visit his mother, now very old, with whom he had gone to pray and change flowers to Our Lady in the family's small chapel in a town near Rome called Palestrina. The floor of the chapel had given way, and he had fallen into a 30-meter deep Roma-era well. The fall had been fatal to him, and it had taken many hours before his lifeless body was recovered. This sad story, unfortunately true, should make us stop for a moment and think about the precariousness of life, and how death can come for us without any warning or appeal. We often believe that we are eternal. We prove it when we close the door on someone, thinking later that we can open it again. We prove it when we keep our love and affection locked behind an impassive gaze. We show it so many times, and in so many omissions, postponements, waits, and fears, that it makes us believe we will always have time to say sorry. I love you. I love you. Or to carry out that project of ours that we care so much about. I want to tell you, dear reader, throw yourself into life while you can. Do what deep inside you feel like doing. Act as if you were going to die tomorrow, and today was the last day for you. And at the same time, act as if your actions and words were written in the history of time and remembered indefinitely. Make every moment of your life infinite. Make it so that, even dying in this instant, you cannot think, if I had done that, or if only I had had time to say. That priest's name was Father Claudius. I pray for his soul and hope that these words of mine will survive in time to remember the greatness of a man who knew how to speak to and comfort the hearts of men, and who then left earthly existence, giving us a great life lesson to reflect on. Live now, because of tomorrow there is no certainty. I hope that these words of mine will survive through time to tell each one who reads them, not to let one day the sun disappear over the horizon, leaving unfinished what important things needed to be done or uttered. Pick, and more pick. It has been a year since I began to focus on my life vision, and I feel like I have made great strides toward it. It all started with a simple game of taking a piece of paper and writing down what I most wanted to happen in my near future. Sort of like a goal card or a wish list. I have been keeping it in front of my work table, that is, my home PC, for a year now, even though I often do not have a table in front of me, but only a patch of grass among the trees, or a glimpse of sand in front of the sea. It really surprises me to see the power of such an exercise, that of consciously choosing one's goals and focusing on them day after day, having them before one's eyes on a piece of paper. Today's hectic life, sometimes too fast for us to think about our life goals and priorities, distracts us from ourselves and our true needs. Television projects us into other lives, situations, and existences, nullifying our contact with our deep self that, from a hidden part, is waiting to be recognized and heard. This gives rise to depression and frustration, the ills of modern man, who does not realize that the real solution lies in getting back in touch with oneself, to consciously choose one's life. I am in the garden and feel the warm breeze of the coming summer rustling through the trees and caressing my hair. I indulge for a moment in the pleasure and satisfaction of having discovered a magical, transformative game that in 1 year has made me do what I had been preparing for years, that of becoming a professional writer. That is, of being not a part-time writer, but one who makes a living from what he writes, without selling his time for anything else. I call this game, Choose Your Life and Focus It. All you need is a sheet of paper, a pen, and contact with the deep part of yourself, the part that knows what you really need to make you happy and make your life a success. What do you need in your life to be happy? Write it down on paper. Who would you like to spend your life with? Write it down on paper. What would you like to do and have? Write it down. Most important of all, finally, write down who you want to be on the stage of life. Make sure for a moment that you become the director of your life. Imagine it the way you want it and write it down on the paper. After doing so, imagine with your heart what you wrote. I mean to feel within yourself the joy of having already achieved those goals. Don't be afraid to imagine, because imagination is a divine gift that must be used consciously to reach heights never reached. Do not be afraid to delude yourself, because every wish holds within it the promise of its fulfillment. Never has a desire been given without the potential of its attainment. Always imagine with feeling and joy, never with resentment and a sense of deprivation. Always imagine as if you were experiencing the exhilaration of victory and the sublime taste of fulfillment. Imagination is a powerful force that shapes the world and your own life. So make sure to direct it in the direction you have chosen. So make a choice, choose your life goals, put them in writing, and focus them with your desire, day by day. It's working in my case, and it will work for you too, because the laws of life are the same for everyone and are impartial. It's all about using them consciously. I look up at the blue sky of this clear early summer morning and think about my current situation. Less than a year ago, I did not know how to sell the rights to my books, and now I have 2 major international publishers who are taking care of my book in their respective languages. The book will come out in English and German. I believe that the genie of the lamp really exists and is the one who manifests and helps us when we imagine with feeling and strong emotion the achievement of our desires. Everything comes from a choice, that of deciding, taking charge of our lives, and consciously choosing what we want and desire to be and have. So choose and choose again. Do it with the certainty that you will be fulfilled and with the irrepressible joy of already being there. This recording of Follow Yourself, Diary of a Visionary in Search of the Meaning of Life by David DeAngelis, was presented by David DeAngelis. Sound recording copyright 2022 and produced by Deep Send Limited 2022.